Behold them, the titanic monuments of antiquity. The pyramids, piercing desert skies like petrified mountains. The colossal stones of Stonehenge, sentinel against the ages. The towering ziggurats reaching for distant gods. We gaze upon these marvels humbled by the sheer ambition and engineering genius of our ancestors. We attribute their creation to pharaohs, kings, priests, and legions of nameless men who sweat and toil etched their legacy into the very bedrock of civilization. But what if the conventional narrative, etched so deeply into our collective consciousness, is missing something fundamental? What if, standing just beyond the spotlight, almost imperceptible, was another force entirely? Imagine for a moment the sheer absurdity, the mind-bending realization that we might have overlooked half of humanity's foundational architects. Could it be that the hands that cultivated the first grains, domesticated the first animals, wove the first textiles, and perfected the tools essential for construction were the very hands we've largely rendered invisible? This isn't just a matter of social justice. It's a profound historical omission, one so vast it's almost bewildering. Consider the mammoth undertaking of early societal organization. Before the grand pronouncements of kings, who managed the complex logistics of sustenance, health, and community cohesion that such massive projects even possible? Who fostered the stability required for a civilization to even dream of building a pyramid, let alone erect it? We see the men hauling stones, but who organized the food supply for those thousands? Who ensured the health and well-being of the families, the next generation of laborers? The answers, historically marginalized, point overwhelmingly to women. From the Fertile Crescent's first settled villages, where agricultural revolution truly began, to the earliest urban centers, women were not merely onlookers or domestic servants. They were innovators, keepers of crucial knowledge, and active participants in the economic and social fabric of. They designed the pottery for storage, crucial for settled life. They mastered textile production, creating sails, ropes, and clothing. They were healers, spiritual guides, and the primary educators of the young. Their ingenuity formed the very base upon which grand structures could rise. The notion that these monumental achievements sprung solely from male endeavor, or that women's contributions were inconsequential, is not merely skewed, it's frankly bizarre. It's akin to admiring a towering oak while completely ignoring the vast, intricate root system that sustains it. We marvel at the visible trunk and branches, utterly blind to the unseen, life-giving network below. The true wonder, perhaps, isn't just the pyramids themselves, but the incredulous fact that we have spent millennia gazing upon them, yet only now begin to truly question the full spectrum of hands, female hands, that must have laid the invisible but utterly indispensable foundations. It's time to pull back the veil and acknowledge the invisible architects of our ancient world, whose profound impact, once seen, reshapes everything we thought we knew.
And so we peel back the layers of dust and dogma to witness the truly staggering, almost unbelievable spectacle of the agricultural revolution, not as a sudden thunderclap of male genius, but as a patient, millennia-long ballet choreographed primarily by women. It's an omission so profound it feels less like history and more like a bizarre collective amnesia. Imagine for a moment the world before agriculture, a precarious existence dictated by the nomadic hunt and gather. Who then truly anchored humanity to the land? It was she, the observant woman, who spent countless hours among the wild grasses, her eyes keen, her hands discerning. While men often ventured far for the hunt, women, tethered closer to home by the needs of children, became the botanical libraries of their age. They watched the cycles of growth, understood the subtle language of the soil, identified edible plants from poisonous impostors, and intuitively grasped the potential within a handful of seeds. It was a profound, almost spiritual communion with the earth, a deep knowing that transformed scarcity into abundance. Can you truly fathom the patience, the persistent experimentation, the sheer intellectual power required to transition from simply gathering wild cereals to actively cultivating them? This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, informed, generational innovation. They selected the hardiest grains, learned how to sow, nurture, and harvest, gradually transforming tough, wild wheat and barley into the foundation of settled civilization. Each seed planted was a tiny act of defiance against the whims of nature, a step towards a future where hunger didn't dictate every waking moment. It's truly astonishing. And it didn't stop at grains. The domestication of animals, another monumental leap, also bears the subtle imprint of female agency. While men might have hunted the formidable beasts, it was often women who tended the wounded, nurtured the young, and observed animal behavior with an intimacy born of daily interaction. Imagine a group of early humans, perhaps women, carefully tending orphaned wild goats or sheep, realizing their docility, their milk, their wool. This wasn't about overpowering, it was about understanding, about coexistence and gentle persuasion. The shift from hunter to shepherdess, from gatherer to farmer, wasn't just a change in occupation, it was a complete paradigm shift, a rewriting of humanity's fundamental relationship with the natural world. The landscape itself was reshaped by their methodical labor. What began as scattered wild patches slowly became fields, organized and tended. Villages coalesced around these nascent farms, providing the very stability upon which all subsequent complex societies would arise. From the wild to the woven, from scattered seeds to structured society, these were the hands that meticulously spun the fabric of our earliest civilizations. To ignore this is not just an oversight, it's a bewildering act of historical blindness, given the irrefutable evidence. The foundations were indeed laid, and the architects, overwhelmingly, were women. So, we've established that women were the primary architects of agriculture, profoundly reshaping humanity's relationship with the land. But their ingenuity didn't stop there. Prepare yourselves for another staggering revelation, one that challenges our conventional perception of early technology. We often picture ancient inventors as rugged male figures, chipping flint or forging metal. Yet the archaeological record, when viewed impartially, tells a profoundly different, utterly astonishing story. Women were in fact the silent, relentless innovators behind some of humanity's most pivotal technological leaps, the ones that transformed mere survival into nascent civilization. Consider pottery. This wasn't just a minor craft, it was a revolution in food storage, cooking, and hygiene. Before pottery, how did you store grains, ferment drinks, or boil water without burning your hands? You simply couldn't effectively. The creation of durable, heat-resistant vessels was a game-changer, enabling communities to store surplus food, prepare diverse meals, and even practice early forms of sanitation. And who, overwhelmingly, were the earliest potters? Evidence from countless sites across the globe points to women. Their hands, accustomed to shaping clay for hearths and domestic uses, translated this skill into crafting exquisite, functional earthenware. Imagine the patient experimentation, the discovery of tempering materials, the development of firing techniques, a complex, multi-stage innovation process driven by daily necessity and remarkable female ingenuity. Then there's textiles. Oh, the textiles. To dismiss ancient weaving as simply women's work is to profoundly misunderstand its monumental significance. Before woven fabrics, humanity shivered in bulky animal hides. Textiles brought warmth, comfort, and adaptable clothing. More than that, weaving was one of the earliest forms of complex data processing, a binary system of warp and weft, an intricate mathematical dance. From wild flax and nettle fibers, women painstakingly developed the skills to spin thread, dye it with natural pigments, and then manipulate it into durable, patterned cloth. This wasn't just about clothing, it was about shelter, fishing nets, carrying bags, and social status. The sheer dexterity, the understanding of material properties, the repetitive yet artistic dedication required to transform raw fibers into intricate patterns, it's a testament to an overlooked genius that truly beggars belief. And what about tools? While men often crafted hunting implements, who created the essential tools for processing food, preparing skins, and working with fibers? Again, archaeological consensus points overwhelmingly to women. Think about grinding stones, bone awls for sewing, spindle whorls for spinning thread, scraping tools for preparing hides. All essential, foundational technologies, often found within domestic contexts, developed and refined by women for their daily tasks. To overlook these contributions is not merely an oversight, it's to willfully blind ourselves to the very engines of early human progress. These silent innovators, these uncredited engineers, were not just performing women's tasks, they were laying the groundwork for all subsequent technological advancement. One meticulously crafted pot, one expertly woven textile, one ingeniously designed tool at a time. The world changed, not with a bang, but with the quiet, persistent hum of their industrious, brilliant hands. We've marveled at the unheralded genius of women as agricultural pioneers and technological innovators. But what if I told you their influence extended even further, reaching into the very soul of ancient communities, shaping their understanding of the divine? Prepare to have your perceptions of early spirituality utterly upended. For millennia before the rise of patriarchal religions and their male-dominated pantheons, it was often women who stood at the spiritual nexus, the sacred EarthKeepers, guiding their communities through the mysteries of life and death, fertility and harvest. Imagine, if you will, a world where the most potent magic resided not in thunderous gods of war, but in the miraculous, life-giving power of the female body. This wasn't just abstract belief, it was woven into the fabric of daily existence. Countless archaeological discoveries, from the Venus figurines of the Paleolithic era to the robust female deities of the Neolithic, testified to an overwhelming reverence for the maternal principle. These aren't mere curiosities, they are explicit, undeniable affirmations of a profound spiritual authority attributed to women. Who sculpted these figures? Who interpreted their meaning? Who led the rituals that celebrated the Earth's bounty and the human capacity to create life? The evidence, once again, points to women. These figures weren't just decorative, they were conduits.
They embodied the cycles of nature, the fecundity of the land, the mystery of birth and renewal. Picture a prehistoric elder, a woman of profound wisdom, her face etched with the stories of generations, presiding over a communal feast or a rite of passage. She wouldn't have been a priestess in the later institutionalized sense, but something far more elemental, a direct intermediary between her people and the primal forces of the cosmos. Her knowledge of herbs, of birth, of death, and the subtle rhythms of the seasons would have made her indispensable. This was a time when spirituality was deeply intertwined with the earth, with survival, with the palpable miracle of growth. Who better to embody and interpret these mysteries than those who literally brought forth new life and nurtured it? The very idea that spiritual leadership could reside primarily with women feels almost alien to our modern sensibilities, conditioned by millennia of male-centric religious narratives. Yet, in those formative eras, it was a perfectly natural, even inevitable arrangement. The silent, powerful voices of these sacred Earth Keepers shaped the nascent moral and spiritual compass of humanity, reminding us that the foundations of faith, like the foundations of civilization itself, were often laid by hands we have too long chosen to ignore. Their legacy whispers from every fertility idol, every cave painting, urging us to finally listen. If you thought women's spiritual authority was a revelation, prepare for another seismic shift in your understanding of ancient societies. Because astonishingly, these same women, the keepers of sacred knowledge, the tenders of life and death, were often the very engines of the early economy. Dynamic figures bustling through vibrant markets and commanding critical industries. This isn't a quaint historical footnote. It's a foundational truth systematically overlooked, a testament to their pervasive economic agency that utterly defies modern assumptions. Picture an early urban settlement, not as a male-dominated outpost, but a thrumming nexus of trade, where women were absolutely central. Imagine dawn breaking over mud-brick dwellings, not just with men heading to fields, but with women already arranging their wares. Here, in the bustling marketplaces of Sumer, Egypt, or the Indus Valley, women were not merely shoppers, they were savvy merchants, shrewd negotiators, and primary producers. They hawked their meticulously crafted pottery, their vibrant, intricate textiles, and baskets woven with generations of inherited skill. Their economic reach extended far beyond the immediate hearth. while managing the vast complexities of ancient households, which were often sophisticated, self-sufficient production units. They simultaneously oversaw critical craft production. Brewing beer, a staple commodity and primary calorie source, was frequently a female domain.
The grinding of grains, baking of bread, processing of milk into cheese, preparation of dried foods for trade. These weren't just domestic chores. They were burgeoning industries, managed, refined, and often spearheaded by women with entrepreneurial spirit. These weren't meek figures confined to the shadows. They held assets, controlled budgets, and made crucial decisions impacting family wealth and community well-being. Think of a market mistress, her voice ringing clear above the din, confidently bartering for silver or grain, her eyes sharp with business acumen. Or a master weaver, her hands stained with rich dyes, meticulously overseeing apprentices in a bustling workshop attached to her home. Their contributions weren't peripheral. They were the very sinews of these nascent economies, driving innovation and wealth creation. It's truly astounding to consider how completely this vibrant, active economic life led by women has been largely omitted from mainstream historical narratives. The sheer scale of their economic involvement, from the bustling marketplace to the productive hearth, reveals a complexity that utterly defies simplistic patriarchal interpretations of ancient life. These are not mere anecdotes. They are echoes from a past where women were undeniable economic powerhouses, foundational to the very concept of civilization. It begs the question, what else have we failed to truly see and acknowledge? And this, perhaps, is the most confounding twist of all. Just as women reached their zenith of influence as economic powerhouses, spiritual leaders, and innovators, a colossal shadow began to fall, subtly at first, then with increasing density, across the vibrant tapestry of their achievements. It wasn't a sudden cataclysm, but a creeping societal transformation, a profound narrative shift that systematically began to obscure, diminish, and eventually erase their foundational contributions. It's an intellectual sleight of hand so pervasive, so deeply woven into our historical understanding, that its sheer audacity leaves us utterly dumbfounded. Think of it. Entire civilizations built on their ingenuity, their labor, their spiritual guidance, only for their stories to be slowly, almost imperceptibly faded from the record. How did this happen? As societies grew larger, more centralized, and increasingly stratified, the nature of power itself began to change. The rise of institutionalized warfare, the codification of laws, and the emergence of state-sponsored, often patriarchal religions gradually shifted the locus of authority. Male-dominated hierarchies, focused on military might and dynastic succession, began to control the written narratives. Consider the earliest written records, epic poems, legal codes, king lists, administrative documents. Who was commissioned to write them? Who were their primary subjects? The scribes, often men, chronicled the deeds of kings, warriors, and priests, inadvertently or deliberately sidelining the domestic, the agricultural, the craft-based and spiritual contributions that had been the bedrock of earlier communal life. The scribes, often men, chronicled the deeds of kings, warriors, and priests, inadvertently or deliberately sidelining the domestic, the agricultural, the craft-based, and the spiritual contributions that had been the bedrock of earlier communal life. The scribes, often men, chronicled the deeds of kings, warriors, and priests, inadvertently or deliberately sidelining the domestic, the agricultural, the craft-based, and the spiritual contributions that had been the bedrock of earlier communal life. The very definition of history began to narrow, emphasizing public, often male spheres of influence, while the immense, vital work of women became relegated to the unspoken, the assumed, the utterly invisible.
The very definition of history began to narrow, emphasizing public, often male spheres of influence, while the immense, vital work of women became relegated to the unspoken, the assumed, the utterly invisible. It's almost as if an unseen hand systematically peeled away layers of their presence. Imagine women, once vibrant and central in early market scenes, slowly becoming blurred figures in the background of a developing scroll. Or a priestess, once commanding respect in ritual, gradually depicted as a silent appendage to a male deity or patriarch. The sheer weight of subsequent patriarchal interpretations, from ancient Greek philosophers to Enlightenment thinkers, then cemented this erasure, presenting a past where women's influence was minimal, their roles purely domestic, a historical fiction that modern scholarship is only now beginning to dismantle. This wasn't just forgetting, it was a profound systemic reframing of reality. The vibrant economic agents, the sacred EarthKeepers, the Silent Innovators. Their stories were not merely lost, but actively overwritten, replaced by narratives that championed a different kind of power, a power that, ironically, often stood on the very foundations women had built. It's a testament to the enduring power of narrative and a chilling reminder of how easily foundational truths can be manipulated, leaving entire generations blind to half of their own history. And this monumental oversight, this grand narrative shift, is precisely what we must now unearth.
And so, we stand at the precipice of a monumental recovery. If history was actively overwritten, then the truth, the real truth, must lie buried, waiting patiently for discovery. And indeed, it does. For while the written narratives of patriarchal societies have long silenced the voices of countless women, the earth itself proves to be a more honest chronicler. Enter the modern forensic archaeologist, equipped not with a pen, but with a trowel, a brush, and an unwavering commitment to letting the silent stones speak. They are the detectives of the ancient world, meticulously peeling back layers of soil, dust, and misconception, seeking the undeniable echoes in artifacts that refuse to conform to the distorted histories we inherited. What they find, time and again, is nothing short of astonishing. In ancient burial sites across Eurasia, from the steppes of Siberia to the early settlements of Europe, graves once assumed to belong to male warriors or chieftains are revealing startling secrets. Take the Scythian warrior women, for instance. For centuries, tales of Amazons were dismissed as myth, yet skeletal remains, buried with bows, quivers, and swords, show unmistakable female anatomy. These weren't anomalies, they were a significant portion of their cavalry, challenging the very bedrock of our understanding of ancient warfare and gender roles. The sheer audacity of these findings leaves us utterly breathless. But it's not just the battlefield.
High-status graves from Neolithic and Bronze Age Europe frequently unearth women interred with intricate jewelry, ceremonial staffs, and most remarkably, tools traditionally associated with male craftspeople or symbols of leadership. Spindle whorls for industrial-scale weaving, or implements for metalworking. These are not passive figures. These are individuals of immense economic power, spiritual authority, and technological prowess. We're talking about women who commanded respect, who led, who innovated, whose influence stretched far beyond the hearth, yet whose stories were rendered invisible. The grave goods, the skeletal markers, the spatial relationships within settlements, they all paint a picture far richer, far more complex, and infinitely more inclusive than the one presented by ancient scribes. Each meticulously brushed bone, each gleaming bead, each carefully preserved fragment of textile whispers a forgotten truth. They compel us to ask, what other myths are in fact historical realities? This isn't merely academic curiosity. It's a profound act of historical justice. By listening to the earth, by allowing the artifacts to speak for themselves, we are not just uncovering ancient bones, we are reclaiming entire lost narratives, restoring dignity to those systematically removed from history, and finally beginning to see the full, breathtaking tapestry of human civilization woven by all its hands.
This ongoing excavation is more than just digging up the past. It is the vital, exhilarating work of rebuilding our collective understanding, one astonishing discovery at a time.
And so we arrive at the exhilarating frontier of history, where the silences of centuries are finally broken, not by ancient voices alone, but by a new generation of intrepid scholars. These aren't just academics, they are historical detectives, cultural architects, passionate storytellers, meticulously sifting through time's dust, armed with fresh perspectives and innovative methodologies. They stand on the shoulders of those who first unearthed physical evidence, but their work extends far beyond the dig site. From hushed archives to cutting-edge forensic labs, they are re-examining every thread of the historical tapestry. They scrutinize clay tablets, once dismissed as administrative records, revealing women's economic power in Mesopotamia. They pore over faded papyri, deciphering legal codes granting women property rights, astonishing for their era. They reevaluate iconography, seeing not just decorative motifs, but complex narratives of female deities, priestesses, and rulers whose influence shaped entire civilizations. The beauty of this reclamation lies in its diversity. No longer a singular male-dominated narrative, it is a chorus of voices, a kaleidoscope of identities. Women, often marginalized in academia, now lead, bringing empathy, nuance, and critical eyes to narratives that previously overlooked female agency. Indigenous scholars reinterpret ancestral traditions, uncovering layers of female leadership and spiritual roles. Interdisciplinary teams, combining archaeology, genetics, anthropology, and art history, paint a picture so rich, so intricate, it beggars belief we once accepted a monochrome version. This isn't about replacing one narrative, it's about making the narrative whole. It's acknowledging that for millennia, half of humanity's story was dimmed, distorted, or simply deleted. Reclaiming her story is not just about historical accuracy. Understanding the full spectrum of human potential, resilience, and contribution. It's recognizing that civilization's foundations were not laid by a singular heroic archetype, but by a vast collaborative web of hands, minds, and spirits. As we conclude, remember, history is not static. It is a living, breathing entity, constantly being revised, enriched, and challenged. The work of these scholars reminds us that the past is never truly settled, and the greatest act of historical wonder is to remain forever curious, forever open to the astonishing truth still waiting to be unearthed, allowing us to see the breathtaking, full tapestry of human civilization woven by all its hands in all its astonishing complexity.